Seth Curry on the Celtics? At first glance, the idea might seem tempting. An experienced veteran with a reliable three-point shot coming off the bench to space the floor and punish defenses collapsing on Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But would this really help the Boston Celtics? Or would it be a trap disguised as a reinforcement? The Celtics have built their identity in recent years on suffocating defense and tactical versatility. Adding a player like Seth Curry, who despite his offensive efficiency is a major defensive liability, could completely destabilize that structure. Just look at the team's recent history. Success has come when players like Derrick and Jrue Holiday, elite defenders, were able to impose their presence on both ends of the floor. Now, imagine a scenario where Curry has to guard one of the league's top guards in a playoff game. He'd have to face players like Tyrese Maxey, Damian Lillard, or even Donovan Mitchell. Could he actually hold his own against those guys one-on-one? Or would the team constantly have to hide Curry on defense, forcing adjustments that take the Celtics out of their comfort zone? And that's not all. Another major concern is the rotation. To give Curry minutes, someone would have to lose playing time. So who gets sidelined? Peyton Pritchard, a young player who continues to improve and brings defensive energy and shooting? Or perhaps even Derrick, who besides being an elite defender, has become a crucial part of the offense as one of the team's best shooters. Not to mention that the Celtics already have Sam Hauser, who fills a similar role to Curry but with better size and defensive ability. On top of that, is it really worth investing in a player whose primary and nearly only function is shooting when the Celtics already have a loaded offensive system? The team's playstyle, built around ball movement and multi-dimensional players, doesn't favor someone like Curry, who often needs to be hidden on defense and doesn't contribute significantly in other areas of the game. The question is it worth compromising the team's defensive identity for an offensive specialist who has bounced around multiple teams and never solidified himself as an essential piece? If Curry were truly a game changer, he would have stayed longer with teams that also needed shooting. His history shows that, while efficient from beyond the arc, he has never been the type of player who elevates a contender's level. If Curry comes, Sam Hauser has to go. But does that make sense? The idea of bringing Seth Curry to the Boston Celtics might seem appealing to some fans, but the truth is that his arrival would create an immediate dilemma: rotation space. If Curry comes in, someone has to go, and the most obvious name would be Sam Hauser. But does it really make sense to swap a rising young player for a declining veteran? Curry and Hauser are essentially the same type of player, three-point shooters who provide floor spacing. However, Hauser has something Curry doesn't: defensive growth. At 26 years old, Hauser has evolved from being just a shooting specialist to becoming a solid defender within the Celtics system. He's not an elite defender, but he has the size, 6'7", and wingspan to bother opponents, along with a deep understanding of the defensive schemes that make Boston one of the most feared teams in the NBA. On the other hand, Curry, now 34 with a history of injuries, has never been known for his defense. And at this stage of his career, that's unlikely to change. Many might look at Curry and think he has more experience, has played on high-level teams, and can make big shots in key moments. But is that really the case? If we analyze his recent impact, we see that Curry has never truly solidified himself as a crucial piece for any contender. He has bounced around between Philadelphia, Dallas, and Brooklyn in recent years without leaving a lasting mark. Meanwhile, Hauser has already proven he can contribute efficiently to a championship-caliber team. His three-point shooting percentage is nearly identical to Curry's. Both hover around 40% for their careers. But with one key difference: he doesn't hurt the team defensively and fits better within Boston's collective system. So why give up on a player who already knows the system, fits the team's culture, and still has room to grow? Another critical factor is the franchise's future. Hauser is on a team-friendly contract and has several years ahead to keep developing within the Celtics system. Curry, on the other hand, is older and would arrive with no long-term guarantees. This means Boston could be sacrificing a valuable asset for a player who might not last more than a season on the roster. Let's not forget that the Celtics have made mistakes in the past by giving up on young talent to bet on veterans who didn't deliver as expected. A clear example is Aaron Nesmith, who struggled in Boston but thrived in Indiana once he got consistent opportunities. Could Hauser follow the same path if he's cast aside for Curry? Boston doesn't need a Curry. It needs a true point guard. If there's one thing the Boston Celtics don't need right now, it's a shooting specialist like Seth Curry. The team already has plenty of spacing with Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, and Derrick White, along with solid shooters like Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard. But what are they really missing? A true secondary playmaker. It's a common mistake to look at a talented team and assume that adding more shooting is always an upgrade. But the Celtics don't need more players who just wait for the ball to shoot. They need someone who can relieve the offensive creation burden on Tatum and Brown, especially in high-pressure playoff moments. And that's something Curry simply doesn't provide. Despite having one of the most efficient offenses in the NBA, the Celtics still struggle. When defenses tighten up, just look at recent playoffs. When facing teams that force isolations and disrupt their rhythm, Boston's offense becomes predictable. This is when a secondary playmaker makes all the difference. Right now, Jrue Holiday has been the best option in that role, but he's more of a defensive guard than a true floor general. White has improved in this area but isn't a natural passer either. And while Peyton Pritchard brings energy and effort, he's far from being a reliable lead guard in crucial moments. Tatum and Brown already carry a huge playmaking responsibility, but is that sustainable? Expecting your two best scorers to also be your primary creators is a strategic mistake. Tatum, for example, has improved significantly as a passer, but he shouldn't be the team's main facilitator. When the playoffs arrive and defenses get tougher, the team will need a distributor to relieve pressure from its stars. If the answer to Boston's playmaking struggles was simply adding more shooters, they would have solved this problem years ago. The issue is that a player like Curry doesn't help in playmaking, and worse, he might actually make things harder in critical moments. Is Curry an elite shooter? No doubt. But when defenses adjust, when the game tightens, and someone needs to organize the offense, he disappears. He lacks the ability to handle the ball and create opportunities for teammates. And even worse, he doesn't have the physicality to drive into the paint and break down defenses, which is essential for a secondary creator. There's also another major concern. If Curry is on the floor and not hitting his shots, what else does he bring? Unlike a versatile point guard, he doesn't offer defense, he doesn't run the offense, and he doesn't attack the rim consistently. In other words, if he's not knocking down threes, he becomes almost useless. Seth Curry only shines when there's no pressure. If we analyze Seth Curry's career without looking at the context, we might be fooled by his solid shooting percentages. He is, without a doubt, an excellent three-point shooter, something increasingly valuable in today's NBA. But is that enough to justify his arrival in Boston? The short answer is no. The long answer: he's a player who only shines when there's no pressure. The Celtics aren't just any team. They're an elite contender, one of the favorites for the championship, and they need players who step up in the toughest moments, when the game is on the line and every possession matters. And that's exactly when Curry disappears. If we look at his regular season numbers, we'll see that Curry has consistently maintained a high three-point shooting percentage, hovering around 40% for his career. That might give the false impression that he's a reliable player, but the real question is, how many times has he actually made a difference when it mattered most? The playoffs are the true test of a player's impact on a contending team, and in that aspect, Curry simply doesn't deliver. While he's had a few occasional good moments in postseason series, he has never been a central piece for an elite team. His time with the Philadelphia 76ers, for example, showed that he can be useful, but only as long as defenses don't target him. When the stakes get higher, he lacks both the physicality and skill set to be a real factor. Now, think about the Boston Celtics. This is a team that needs players who elevate their game when the pressure rises. Tatum, Brown, and Holiday have already proven they can do that. Even role players like Derrick White and Al Horford have had big playoff moments. Does it really make sense to add a player with the opposite track record? In the playoffs, defensive intensity skyrockets. Players who thrive in the regular season, where the game is more spaced out and less physical, often disappear when facing defenses prepared to exploit weaknesses. And Curry, with his lack of size, 6'2", and physical strength, is exactly that type of player. When he faces stronger, more aggressive defenders, his efficiency plummets. Without the space and freedom he enjoys in the regular season, he can't impact the game the same way. Unlike Stephen Curry, who has elite ball handling and off-ball movement to escape pressure, Seth Curry lacks the tools to create his own shot against well-structured defenses. If Curry at least made up for his flaws with playmaking or defense, this would be a different conversation. But he doesn't. He's not a good passer, he's not a good defender, and he can't impact the game if his three-point shot isn't falling. In the playoffs, well-coached teams know how to expose one-dimensional players. If he's on the floor and not hitting shots, he becomes a liability. The Celtics need versatile players who can contribute in multiple ways. Curry is not that guy. If Curry joins, will he actually get minutes? This is the question no one seems to be asking when speculating about Seth Curry on the Boston Celtics. In theory, an experienced shooter can always be useful, but in practice, where would he fit? Joe Mazzulla already has a well-defined and efficient rotation, and adding Curry could create more confusion than benefits. If he joins, whose minutes would he take? Would it be Jrue Holiday's, one of the team's best defenders and playmakers? Derrick White's, who has become essential on both ends of the floor? Peyton Pritchard's, a younger player already adapted to the system? Or would Curry just sit at the end of the bench without making a real impact? If the last option is the answer, then signing a veteran just to leave him without playing time would be a waste of time and money. One thing Brad Stevens has done well since taking over as the Celtics' president of basketball operations is building a roster that makes tactical sense. He doesn't make signings based on name or reputation. He brings in players who fit the system. And the truth is, Boston doesn't need a shooter at any cost. If they're going to add a three-point specialist, it should at least be someone who can either play defense or create their own shots. Curry does neither. If they're going to bring in a veteran, it should be someone with experience in high-stakes games and the ability to elevate their play in the playoffs. Curry doesn't have that track record. Do the Celtics need reinforcements? Maybe a playmaker or a strong defensive wing off the bench, but a veteran shooter who doesn't defend, doesn't create, and would take minutes away from more useful players. That makes no sense. If Curry were to join, the reality is that he would probably spend more time on the bench than on the court. And if a player can't be used consistently, his signing is a waste of time, money, and a valuable roster spot that could be better utilized. If the Celtics want to strengthen the team, they need to think strategically. A veteran who doesn't fit the system, doesn't have a strong playoff track record, and would only complicate the coach's rotation cannot be considered a real upgrade.